All right, Trilogy, are we ready for another episode with Dr. Roger Landry? I think we have let everybody in the waiting room. So thank you for joining us on Saturday, April the 15th, a normal tax day, but not this year. You have until the 18th. So you'll be resilient as we go through today's program. I want to welcome you, as always, to one of our keynote speaker series with Dr. Roger Landry. A reminder to everybody who is joining us, and maybe those who are not joining us, that we will be recording this session as always, and we will post it out on MTL in a news post for you in the next week or so. And for those of you who emailed me individually, I will make sure that you get it yourself. And today, Roger, we're going to talk about the role of resiliency in a 4-part series. So I'm going to let you take it away, but also remind our members that they can go in the chat feature if they want to send in questions. And then we have 15 minutes at the end for Q&A. So I'm going to go off camera for those of you who want to hear more from Roger, not just me. So I'll see you in a bit. Roger, take it away.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here as always, and I was very, very happy to be able to be at a community in person in February with you, Sarah, and everybody there in Peoria, and that was quite an experience. I thank you for that. Thank you all for spending a Saturday with me, and I'm going to make it worth your while. And as you know, resilience is something we all very much had a group, even a species, experience with over these last couple years. And that itself, I think, raised the interest in resilience, and it reinforced the need for resilience. So that's why we chose this. And as Sarah said, we're going to do 4 sessions on this. This is the first. And because resilience is a complex thing, as you will begin to hear, this is an overview. So I'm going to touch on just about everything that we're going to cover in this 4-part series, but not in the detail that you will get in the subsequent presentations. And those will all be virtual and all recorded, as Sarah said. So we had best get going. Now, first of all, as a review, this is the year. Our theme is the how of healthy longevity. The how. And we have this circle, this graph here shows us, this image shows us how most people approach a topic or a challenge. And they usually focus on the what. And Sarah and I both agree that it's very important that we start from the beginning of this image, the why. And we have dealt with that in previous sessions. And today it's about the how, and the 4 on resilience will be about the how also, in order to achieve the what, the healthy longevity. And that is about being healthy and functional as you get older, but it's really defined by you and what you want to do. Before I begin, I want to tell you a story. I'm a storyteller, as my bio says. Many, many years ago, I was in Southeast Asia, and I occasionally flew on rescue helicopters like this Jolly Green here, and we had all kinds of missions. Very exciting. It really had me stay in the military because it was so exciting. And this particular day, we were out to get a woman who was on an Indian freighter. She was the captain's wife. She was pregnant and she was bleeding. They were in the South China Sea, and it was a stormy, stormy day. And we didn't have all the navigation aids that we do now. We didn't have GPSs and things. So it took quite a while to find that ship. And the whole mission was over 7 hours. And we had to refuel 3 times. That thing out in front is not a weapon. That's a refueling boom. So we pulled up behind another airplane. He lets out a big hose, and we refueled midair. And we finally found the ship, and to make it a little shorter, it was very dramatic trying to get her. We lowered the first PJ parachute jumper, and he hit the hull of the ship, was injured. We had to send the second one down, and finally they evaluated her and said she needs to go. Her blood pressure's down, and she's in labor. And so we lifted her up. We lifted the 2 PJs up, and we started headed home. And so there we are on the South China Sea in the storm, and now it's dark, it's nighttime, and she starts to have very, very active labor, and so she's going to deliver. So we're in the back of this helicopter here, very dark, the PJs holding flashlights for me, and I'm ready to deliver this baby. When I hear in my headphones the pilot going through the checklist for ditching, we were having maintenance troubles, and the helicopter was losing altitude. And I'm going to leave it there, believe it or not, but I'm going to finish it at the end. But I tell you this story because I think it is a sort of intense, concise, resilience requiring situation. So, with that, let's learn a little bit more about resilience. These are challenging times. I think the pace of life and what we have seen with COVID and what we have seen with so much of our higher technology, how we rush around, how much the speed at which we go around. These are very challenging times. Many people think this is resilience, and it's not. This is insanity, really. No, not so much. I have great respect for people who can do this, but it's not for me. This is endurance, what you see here. So resilience is something different. And in fact, COVID did give us a challenge and give us a really very in-your-face view of what resilience is. And it is because COVID totally disrupted our lives in every aspect. It isolated many of us. Many of us got sick and had to recover. We lost people and had to get through the grief and the sorrow of that. And all the while having everything we used to do essentially taken from us. That required a tremendous amount of resilience. So I'm going to ask a few questions because these questions address resilience in us. So there's a flat tire there, but that something as easy as that sometimes requires a lot of resilience. And so these questions are pertinent. When something happens, you say, "Why me?" And and you rail against the tire gods. Say, for instance, you start to project in what we call a way that's called catastrophizing. Namely, you project the worst things are going to happen from this. I'm going to be late. I'm going to lose my job, whatever. And so it makes it all the worse. And you think these things are inevitable because you're just a bad luck dude. So and how do I respond to this? Few more questions again, this just to give us a sense. As you answer these questions, it'll start to give you some sort of idea of whether you are resilient, but we'll get in more into that. And so the thing is, can you tolerate high levels of ambiguity? In other words, you're just not sure what's going to happen next, but you feel you can respond. In fact, there's a study being done in New England on centenarians. There are over 100, and the thing that the most common characteristic is optimism. And people say, "Why are you optimistic? You're over 100. You're facing the Grim Reaper here shortly." And they said, "Yeah. Well, I've lived long enough to know that bad things are going to happen, and I've responded, and I'll respond this time. Of course, maybe not to the one that finishes me, but all the others, I'll respond to it." And so that's toleration of ambiguity. Do you adapt quickly to new developments, or do you resist change? Do feelings of anger and stress, these things. So these are all resilience questions that I'm not going to ask you for your answers, but the answers to that start to give you a view of where you might be. And we're going to do more of that because when you leave here, you're not only going to know resilience, you're going to have a little better idea where you stand in it. So what is resilience? Well, there's different definitions depending upon what field you're in. It's really a physics term, engineering term. And there it is there, the ability of a substance or object to spring back after its shape has been dented. You dent something and then it pops back. So elasticity. But for us, it's more important, the human characteristic of resilience. And that is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties and essentially a toughness. But it's also the capacity to avoid or minimize the effects of disease and injury. So say COVID did that to you, whatever it did, disrupted your life. But the fact is, now we can think about in preventive terms, how can I be more ready for something like that? you can't think of everything that might happen, but what we're going to talk about here is exactly what's needed to be the best that you can be relative to your resilience, no matter what life throws at you. And life will throw it at you, right? So, excuse me, we've been through this. What healthy longevity is, it's basically rather than taking that shaded area, which is only about decline, we want to have a lifestyle of physically, intellectually, socially, and with meaning and purpose that will allow us to keep going on that dotted line, even when life throws us a curveball, that little dip there. That's healthy longevity. And resilience is that thing that allows us to bounce back after life throws us a curveball. All right. So these things are all related. However, resilience is more than just a list of traits, which I'm going to give you. It's a very complex subject. And therefore, that's why we're doing a 4-part series on it, because it's very important to have. But again, it can be a little difficult. If you want to sum it up at 5,000-foot level, this is a heart and head thing. Heart in the sense of, yes, the heart, the real heart, but more in the sense of grit. And then it's about your emotional state, your intellectual state, your ability to be able to manage all of the negativity that comes when life throws you a curveball and be able to bounce back. And so that's again at 5,000 feet. And these Dr. Siebert here wrote the seminal work on resilience many years ago, and he found these common characteristics in people who were resilient, who were able to bounce back almost no matter what life threw at them. And the first, I'm not surprised, is mindfulness. You say, why? Well, mindfulness is really being present and not just the victim of your chattering mind, your thoughts, which many of these thoughts we have up to 60,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative. And that's incredible. And so we're really the slaves and victims of our minds. In fact, we even think we're our mind. Our mind is just a tool. We're spiritual beings, and the brain and the mind and our thoughts, those are tools for us to get through life. But we're at a time now where we're having so many thoughts that it runs the show, and so that's what we feel. I know that can sound a little funky, but if you really think about it. So it's being present. When you're present, you can identify, okay, life just threw me a curveball. That's not very good. I'm starting to get really freaked out about this. But you're observing yourself doing rather than being whipped into it. We'll talk more about that. Positive outlook is critical. You've heard me say that those who look at something half full versus half empty, they tend to live 7.5 years longer than the half empty ones. Imagine. And it's 7.5 good years because, again, they look at the positive. Need flexibility, of course, the ability to go with the flow, so to speak, to some extent. I don't like that analogy because we're going to talk about flow, but it's the ability to realize that change happens and I have to be flexible. If I resist the change, which is inevitable, and it's about Heraclitus, in fact, the ancient Greeks said the only constant in life is change. How's that for irony? The only constant is change. And being flexible is able to bounce back and able to accept it. You may not like it, but be able to accept it and accommodate it. Concern for others is critical. We are social beings, and to face a difficult situation alone or not being concerned about others, not only having the social support for us, but being there for others. This is a critical component of resilience. Healthy lifestyle, we've been talking about that. That last year was all about that. The first part of this year was about it. And resilience comes when we are strong as we can be, and that's from a physical sense, but also an emotional and psychological sense, physically, intellectually, socially, and with meaning and purpose in our lives. And that's the last one, is the strong sense of purpose. Because are you going to take a hit and still get out of bed if you don't have a purpose? When life knocks you down, you may just well stay down if there's no purpose. And so purpose is critical. And just above is a sense of humor. That sense of humor is related to the positive outlook. We have a thing in medicine and other very difficult professions soldiers in combat, emergency medical people, and we in the emergency room, what we call dark humor, gallows humor. And it's basically laughing in private. We don't want anyone else to see it at certain things that are happening, even though it is dark and it is gruesome and it is and many times inhumane, but it's the only way someone can keep sane and continue to work. So sense of humor is very, very critical for us. But now, as I said, resilience is complex, so I want to drill down on it. And there are three particular aspects of resilience that are related to those characteristics I just gave you, those traits, but are based upon some fundamental theories and approaches that I believe we need to do. And these three, each one is going to have a separate session in our four-part session. So the next one will be a cognitive behavior therapy theory, and then mindset, and then emotional intelligence. I've mentioned these things before last year, especially with the emotional part, but we're going to drill down on each one. But today I'm just going to give you an overview of all three, but expect that the next three will all drill down even further on these subjects, which are intrinsically related to resilience. So Epictetus here was a Greek, and long ago he recognized that men are disturbed not by things but by their view, the view which they take of them. And this is the basis for a modern therapy approach based upon cognitive behavior theory. And it's cognitive behavior therapy, it's called, and it is related to resilience. Basically, what we're talking about, as this quote says, is that how we respond to something internally. There is stressful situations out there, but you may not believe this, but most of the stress that we experience, I mean, most, like 99%, is self-induced. Yeah, yes, self-induced. Because I know stressful things happen, terrible things happen, but it's our response that is the stress. And so if we're able to recognize that, how we look at something is important. We can be sad, we can recognize that we're grieving, but it doesn't take us over. And so we're able to see it. So uh, uh, there is a book called The Power of Now. And basically, in that book, the author talks about when you have a stressful situation, there's only three things to do. You either fix it or make a plan to fix it. That's doing something. Or it is walking away because it's not our problem. And we do that a lot. We carry problems around that really aren't ours. Situation in the world. I don't want to be, not tell them to be negligent of that or to be callous, but if it's not ours to solve, it is not healthy for us to carry it around. And some of those things are quite disturbing and gruesome. And then the third thing is just to accept it. And that's what most of us have to do. Accept that it's there, accommodate. You don't have to like it, approve it, anything, but it's reality. How can you fight reality? When you get a flat tire, you can rail against the tire guard. You can say, I'm going to be late. How could this happen to me? Or you can fix it. It's reality. And we accommodate to it. And so we'll be having, like I said, a whole session on this, but here's a few more things about it. So what is it really? So what if someone looked at you like this, especially you guys out there, but anyone really, you know, what starts to go through your head? This doesn't look good. As Did I forget to take out the garbage? Maybe something small, or those golf clubs that I just ran over. Were they yours? Or maybe something serious about the relationship. But these are the things that go through our minds. And as I said, our minds are kind of prone to go negative. When our ancestors were walking down a path and they saw a brown patch over here, they could do two things. They could say, well, that's just a rock. Or they could say, that's a lion, and I'm going to keep clear of that. Well, those that had the positive outlook, so to speak, and thought it was just a rock, and it was a lion, they didn't make it. Those that were careful were the ones that made it. And so that's what was passed down. It is a tendency to go negative. But if we recognize that, then we can deal with it a whole lot better. So again, most of our thoughts are negative. So as she looks at us, your head starts to spin about the horrible things this could be, and then to catastrophize. And so that's huge amounts of stress. We have a fight or flight mechanism that's for survival, and this is what this is all about. It is meant to do something, run or fight. It is not meant, and it's meant to be very limited in time. So it's not meant to last a long time or to be carried around with us all the time, which is unfortunately how most of us go through life today, with our thoughts all over the place, carrying them around in a backpack. And that stress is diminishing our resilience, causing disease. And so I have a friend who wrote a book called Why Don't Zebras Get Ulcers? And it's because, mammals do have feelings and emotions, and certainly a survival instinct. And so if a lion chases a zebra, maybe the zebra won't make it. End of story. But if it does make it, you'll see zebras grazing within minutes. Now, if something like that happened to us, if someone mugged us or something, we would probably carry that around with us for the rest of our lives in some way. Certainly in the short term, almost every minute would be there. And we carried around in a backpack, and negativity and stress reducing. And so that's why they don't get ulcers, and we do. They're not blessed or cursed with the brains we have. And I'll talk more about that. Our brains are a blessing, but they're also a curse, because our minds are chattering. And so this theory is all about this. There are thoughts, emotions, and behavior. And so thoughts drive emotions, which drive behavior. And then, but sometimes it can, the emotions drive behavior, but it can go the opposite way also around this. But for the most part, this is a counterclockwise thing. We have thoughts, again, frequently negative. We get emotions from that, and we'll talk more about emotions, but these are automatic survival things that we have, and that drives our behavior. So with the woman there, if we think that she's whatever, something negative, okay, she ran over our golf clubs, you think. And so the emotion comes is anger, surprise, whatever, and that uh, causes behavior which can get you into big trouble. You can overreact if you don't monitor it with our high brains. So this is just an automatic thing, but again, our brains have to be involved if we're not going to let this have us get out of control and get into trouble. So we can manage our thoughts. What do we do about it? So there's mindfulness. Now that is being present. That is being able to recognize what's happening inside our minds and our bodies. You get this feeling frequently. Again, it's being present. You have felt it before, and something happens, like you see a beautiful sky at night, you walk in nature, you meditate, you're reading a book, you're doing woodwork, you're knitting, whatever, and you're doing art, and your mind sort of doesn't shut off, but the chattering mind shuts off, and you're in a beautiful, beautiful place. And it just can't last all the time, but we need to be there periodically in order to make sure that the stress that we experience in our lives doesn't continue to exponentially increase, which it will do. This sort of reboots it if you have mindfulness. To share what you're feeling is an excellent way to mute some of the more dangerous reactions to some of the stress-producing things that happen in our lives. Women are more adept at this, and I personally believe that's why they live a little longer, personally, because they're able to share it. And there's also distraction, and that's somewhat like what I was just saying. So you're really stressed, your mind is all over the place. You go for a walk in the woods, what they're calling forest bathing or something these days, and so it relieves you. If you can be in the present moment and not in the woods thinking this, which is less likely if you are with nature, then that sort of reboots the whole thing and doesn't do the damage. Okay, so and then there's developing a strategy to manage it, because um, we know these things happen in certain situations. We know that maybe we're very susceptible to losing our temper, And so you begin to develop a strategy of how not have that happen. We'll talk a little bit more about that. And then there's expectation, the expectation that I can manage my thoughts and my emotions and my behavior. And I just sort of step out of myself and watch what's happening, observe what's happening. And, uh, and these are ways that, from a cognitive behavior theory, we can monitor our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Now, EQ, which I'm going to talk about in just a little while, is very similar to this, emotional intelligence, but this is a beginning. So now mindset. We're going to have another session totally devoted to mindset, because this is another very important aspect of not only resilience, but the quality of our lives. Well, let me show you some pictures. I'm going to show you three images, and I want you to monitor how you respond immediately without really taking any time, just what your first response is. All right? And then I'll be quiet while we do that for three pictures. Okay, we look at life through a lens. It's our unique lens, and that lens is shaped and formed by our experience, and sometimes not even by our experience, but what maybe our parents told us, or a teacher told us, or someone else told us, or we may have experienced something in our lives, and that can shape us in a way where we look at the world in a way that is set, that is formed by very little data and very little experience, but we feel that and we stick to it, and that's my story and I'm sticking to it, sort of thing. And that can be extremely dangerous, and for sure it's a problem when we have a fixed mindset, I'll talk about, and with resilience, because that basically would not allow us to be able to take life's curveballs. So we can look at as Einstein said here in his quote, we can look at life in two ways, and that everything's a miracle, that's positive, or that nothing is a miracle, and that's maybe not even negative, but it probably is, but at least it's neutral. And but this is a choice that we have. But we sometimes feel that we are robots. In fact, this definition makes us think, as if we are. It's a habitual mental attitude that determines how you will interpret and respond to situations. So we have this, and it's something that can work for us, certainly can work against us, but this is a critical component of having resilience. Researchers tell us that basically there are two types of mindset. There's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and of course there's a combination, because periodically one situation or one subject or one environment you would respond to with a growth mindset, and others with a fixed. But in general, humans tend to be heavily weighted towards one or the other, and sometimes completely one way or the other. So a fixed mindset is associated with these types of statements, and I'll let you read them as they go. But they denote something that, like this one, that you don't like change. It is very difficult to be resilient if you fight or don't. We may not like it, but if we resist change. And so you can see that this is also, you feel you're predetermined as to your skills. You're predetermined how you will respond. You are who you are, and you hear people say that. And from one standpoint, that's true. But does that mean you can't grow? Does that mean you can't accommodate? And so that's fixed. Growth, on the other hand, and you'll be expecting that there's probably a little more positive things here, but challenges are looked at as an opportunity, as an adventure, and people look for them, and they're inspired, and they realize that what they achieve in life is really related to what they put into it, or what skills they develop is really related to the amount of work they put into it. They know that life requires work. And this is so with resilience. Now, expectation is really very important. So some of you may remember that for a while, no runner had ever broken the 4-minute mile. Roger Bannister and researchers from all over the world, scientists, physicists, medical people, they all said it's impossible for a human to do it. And then Roger Bannister did it in 1954. And then 45 days later, someone else did. And then someone else. Currently, we have runners that go 17 seconds below the 4-minute mark. 17 seconds, huge. And so we could see that this expectation was really a barrier to achieving something. That can be reinforced by society, but most of it is how we feel internally. Now, there's a psychologist at Harvard, Ellen Langer. This is her book, Counterclockwise. She did a study, and I may have mentioned this, but basically she took 70 men in their 70s with some significant problems and took pictures, videos, blood parameters, eye and ear baseline, and then brought them to a place in New Hampshire where she had recreated the 1950s. Now, this was in 1970, so that's 20, 25 years earlier for these men. So they were brought into an area when they were a lot younger, and their behavior changed radically. This is related to expectations. The environment was reinforcing an expectation that you could do more because you did do more when you were in that environment. Pictures, families said, what's happened? You look so good. Hearing improved, vision improved, some blood parameters improved. Certainly their behavior improved. They carried their own luggage. They walked more. They took stairs. This was remarkable, and it's set her on a whole career of studying the brain and expectations and the power of the brain to actually, within reason, bring things into reality, like Roger Bannister, that probably would not have happened had we not challenged that. So what do you do about mindset? Well, be aware, watch yourself. You answered those questions, and so you can see how you react. How did you react to those photos? Positive, negative, with compassion, with less than compassion, and those all depict some issues within our society. And you don't have to like everything that's happening, but to have a mindset where you are rigid that this is a negative situation, and you will not tolerate it. You don't internally tolerate it. That makes for stress within you. We really choose our mindset, but it will take work to change it from negative to positive. But if we do it in a Kaizen way, small steps at a time, maybe one issue at a time, but then do things like this. Challenge your views, challenge your own views. Say, what if what I believe according to about this particular thing were not true? Is it possible it's not true? Are there situations where it shows that it's not true? It can't be, nothing can be all bad. And uncertainty is the rule. There's no real certainty in life. And mindset, especially fixed mindset, really starts to deal with certainty. And certainty is not the rule. We can never be that sure. Someone tells you they're absolutely sure repeatedly, maybe you should doubt that. Listen to other views, respect them, respect facts. If you don't respect facts, then you can run off in a direction that you choose. And we're seeing a lot of that lately. And that's okay, but it's not reality. And it's also preventing you from being flexible and all of those traits that result in resilience. Allow others their views. You don't have to convince them they're wrong. Allow them their views. If they choose that, that's fine. You just respect it. Just respect the view. It's also nice to maybe hear why they feel that way. Ask yourself, if you try to challenge them, have you ever had an argument with someone and had them change their view? Most people say, no, I never did. And so that's like the Chinese proverb, what is insanity? It's doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Come on, spend your time better. Save the positive. Okay, see the positive in everything. Even COVID had positive aspects. In spite of the death and suffering and disruption, if you really look, there are positive things about that. If one is just that we're better able to respond to viruses as a race now, and that if only that. But even within your life, you got to be flexible. We've talked about it, and if you have purpose, no matter what life throws at you, you're going to be able to respond. You will respond, and if you have purpose, that is going to affect how you look at the world, your mindset. So, mindset is basically the lens with which you look at the world. The third one, which will be our fourth and final presentation in this series, is about emotional intelligence. And so this is EQ. We've talked about it before. And it's, as you see, the ability to perceive, use, understand, and manage and handle emotions. Now, these are not only your emotions, but it's the emotions of those around you. And when I say manage, I don't mean control. I mean to be able to assess, understand, and then pivot and adjust how you interact in order to be respectful and understanding of their emotions. If they're really angry, you don't want to poke the bear, that sort of thing. And so this is a very important human characteristic. When we talked about social connection, this came up and when we talked about emotional confidence, this came up. And we are social creatures, and therefore social creatures can't be just about me, only me, with all these others. It's about them and us. And so it's very important that we be able to understand our emotions. They are normal, adaptive, even for survival, mental and physiologic feeling states, and that direct our attention and guide our behavior. This, again, as I said, this is automatic, sort of like what the zebra did, sort of like what we do sometimes when we get angry. Someone does something and we respond with anger, and our behavior that reflects that. And that can get us into trouble. It's human. It is, and many times we may not be able to alter that course. But in order to have emotional intelligence and get the resilience and the health and the reduced stress that comes from that, and better relationships and more relationships, hey, this is priceless. This one, but if we don't, our emotions, and they're designed this way, just carry us along like a huge river rapid. And we get the thought. And remember, it can be something we see and experience, but it also can be, as we said with cognitive behavior, it can be induced by a thought, one of those 60,000 medical negative thoughts that you have a day, and the catastrophizing that we do. And then that just carries you along. And some people say it cannot be controlled. And when you don't have any emotional intelligence, that basically is the case. These people end up dead in jail with no friends, hurting other people, and it's not a good situation. These are the basic, and remember, we're going to deal with this even in more detail in the fourth presentation of this series. This is the first. These are the basic emotions, but there are so many. There's hundreds, as many as 150 that they have identified. So our emotions can be extremely complex and different every day. This is our brain, and this limbic system is called the mammalian brain because we share it with mammals. And yes, mammals do have emotions, but emotions that are basic survival emotions. And survival, say, like being maternal, mothers, female dogs, female zebras, whatever. They take care of their babies. They have a maternal instinct. That's a survival thing, and that's why it's there. But other mammals are not like us. We have this higher brain with the frontal lobe, and that's, as I said before, is a curse and it's a blessing. It can be a curse because this brain, with the negative thoughts we have, can cause emotions to be triggered and then the behavior that comes from it. It's a blessing because when we're hit with an emotion, we have the ability with our frontal lobe to observe that that is happening. What is happening? I'm really getting angry over this, and just being sort of an observer mutes the real power of that, the loss of control that comes from that. So just being aware of that is something critically important. So it's a good brain, but it has its dark side, so to speak. So these are the things that are necessary, the traits that are necessary for good EQ, good emotional intelligence. We've identified it again here, defined it, but it's about perceiving the emotions of others. It's understanding emotions in general. It's been able to identify and manage our emotions, and it's using emotions to improve relationships. And this is all emotional intelligence. And again, this is complex. We're going to go into more detail. So these are the characteristics that we need in order to have solid emotional intelligence, and we'll be going into these at a different presentation. So, but quickly, I don't want to leave you just with the thoughts and the challenges. I want to leave you with 5 ways to develop your emotional intelligence. Mindfulness and presence come in once again. If we can quiet that chattering mind, which again, lots of thoughts, mostly negative, set things off. If we can just be present, and if I'm just sitting here talking to you, I'm not thinking about what's going on in the world or in with my grandchildren or in Ukraine or even in the workplace. I'm not thinking of that. I am here. I am not. I'm not being callous by not realizing those things are out there, but to carry them around only hurts me, hurts my relationships, causes me disease, and lowers resilience, puts us at risk for all the things that low resilience have. So mindfulness, absolutely. It's just as I personally think that mindfulness, in all of my experience, all the good advice I've get, I think if I had one thing like Curly and City Slickers, I think it would be just that: more time being mindful, more time being present, and because that can affect stress, that affects health, quality of life, relationships, everything. Second is to have gratitude. If you look for the positive, being grateful for something, you're looking at the positive, just as I say. And even can I be grateful for COVID? Yes, but in a certain way, and not being callous about it. It was a horrible thing. I wish it didn't happen. However, some good things did happen that helped me reevaluate my value system and what my work life was about, that sort of thing, and how I relate to others and how important others are to me and how important family and being connected is. These were things to be grateful for. Some say keep a gratitude journal and every day put something in it because you can. Have compassion. When you have compassion, you are a member of the human species. You are humane. You are able to relate to others. Requires emotional intelligence, and thinking of others. You're thinking less of yourself, less as a lone wolf in the world, and that feeling of isolation is very destructive for us. We are better together. We need each other. I know people can be annoying, but we still need others. We've talked about that with social connection. Forgiveness. There's a lot of transgressions out there, and this is something that we want to make sure that we consider, because when someone transgresses you, some people can define the rest of their lives with their response to this transgression. You know who benefits most when you forgive someone? You do. The person forgiving. You take off such a load, such negativity, and that it is so healthy for you. All right, the next one you've heard before from me. It's a big one. Get ready. Drum roll. Give up the need to be right. Is that possible, doctor? Yeah, well, it is possible. Now, when I say give up the need to be right, one of you in another lecture, one of you said, well, what if you are right? And it's a good question. But the fact is, if you drill down on this, it's that give someone else. Uh, Let me put it this way: you don't have to have the other person realize they are wrong. You don't have to beat them up and until they say, "I give up. I was wrong." It's that you allow them to have that view, and you don't need the rest of the world to agree with you. That's not asking that much, is it? But that's not how we roll. We feel that if someone doesn't agree with us, then it negates us. And some of us fight this as if our very life depended on it. And our emotional, saneness and health sometimes does because we are so identified with a certain thing, with a negative mindset, with a fixed mindset. So consider how you might do this. Kaizen, it's not gonna change right away. On one issue, learn the words. You might be right. You might be right. You're not saying they're right. You're not doing anything. You're just acknowledging that they have a point of view, and you're going to allow them to have it. So I'm going to sum up and with some other recommendations on resilience that you've seen before. This is the mindfulness. Be here, be present, be mindful, if only for seconds. And that can grow into more time. But do those things, and you'll know what they are, that shut down that chattering mind. And we've talked about art that does it for artists, or writing, or nature, or meditation, or pets, or reading, music, whatever. Try thinking of the world with a half full uh, point of view. So some that's very hard, but maybe take the worst thing out there and say, is there anything positive about that? And there usually is if you look for it. Great benefit. Flexibility. I think we've said it. Charles Darwin certainly said it, that it's not the strongest of the species that survives, nor the most intelligent that survives. It is the ones that are most adaptable to change. As humans, we tend to resist change, and that doesn't work well for us. But it is sort of almost a default position for many people, probably the majority. And so recognizing that and being open, listening, and realizing that change will happen. It is the nature of things, and how I accommodate it into my life is going to determine how I'm going to age. And you thinking of others, helping others. This is related to compassion. They're very, very critical to being part of the human race and good relationships and the resilience that comes from that. And you have to take care of yourself. This is about the uh, the lifestyle things that we're talking about in this whole lecture series: the physical, the intellectual, the social, and the meaning and purpose part. This is how we personally take care of ourselves and be the strongest we can be, physically, emotionally, psychologically, for when that curveball comes to us. And lastly, it's your sense of humor. Um, some people think, well, I have it or I don't. Well, again, it's as if looking for the positive in things, you can look for the humor in things. And sometimes you may have to fake it. If you go to a bathroom mirror and just start to fake laugh, eventually you'll end up laughing. If you're in a room where someone's laughing, usually it's an infectious sort of thing. That's maybe a way to start. You're maybe not seeing a sense of humor, but you're at least beginning to have those feelings of laughter. So, and lastly, it's know your purpose. Find your purpose. If you don't, then I think that you're not going to want to recover from a curveball that life throws you. Now, before I end, I want to a quote from Hemingway, of course, and I've used this before: "World breaks everyone, and afterwards, some are strong in the broken places." And so that's what this is all about. Um, Sarah, you wanted to say things? Wanted to add to this? I'm sure you have some keen thoughts.
I always do. Thank you. One of the things that really resonates with me in finding purpose, and I love the picture of the man carrying the dog, sentimental, of course, but we have so many opportunities for our members to connect in our communities, to really be part of a volunteer group, to find community, to find purpose. So if you're out there and you don't feel connected, please reach out to your lifestyle directors in your community and they will help you. Sorry, I just get emotional about that.
Well, we all have stories of people who get isolated, and as I get older these days, when I see real connection, when I see something like that man carrying the dog or someone helping someone else, I kind of well up myself because it is such a basic human emotion, and unfortunately we don't see it quite as much as we should.
Yeah. And I had two questions that came in while your presentation was going on, Dr. Landry. One of them was, how do we quiet our chattering minds that wake us up at night?
Well, you know, we all wake up, and I'll tell you what I do. And I sleep very well, but usually when I wake up, if I get up or something and then try to go back to sleep, then my mind is going. And so even as I hit the pillow, I said, okay, I become present. I know that my mind is going to start running, and I observe it. And I say, I'm not going to be thinking of that. If a thought comes in, I'm not going to think of that. If a thought comes in, I put it away. And eventually there's no thought come in, and I go back to sleep. Some people count sheep, but basically when you do that, you're doing something that occupies your mind, and you are present for it.
Mm-hmm.
Some people have to get up, and if you get up, maybe go somewhere else, read some lines in a book that's a comforting book. Don't turn on the TV. I don't think that's a good thing. Music maybe that relaxes you, and you may end up sleeping on the sofa somewhere, rather than in your bed. But sometimes you have to get up and break that. But to sit there and stew, that's hell, and I think we all experience it. But I think just being able to observe what's happening and your reaction to it is a long way in controlling it.
Yeah, I agree with that because I'm not going to say it only happens if you're a working individual, but it happens a lot when you're a working individual. What do I need to do? Balancing work, life, birthdays, all this other things come in, and it just kind of clouds your mind at 4 a.m. And you're like, I wanted to sleep until 6. So I get that. And then I sent you a note about the importance of volunteering, which I think that I touched on a little bit. But, recently I saw a fantastic TED Talk on what retirement looks like and how people walk through that journey. And the first phase of retirement is I'm on vacation. The second phase is, shoot, what's my purpose now? I don't have to get up. I don't need to go to work. I don't need to do this. What do I need to do? And then 3 is trying to find yourself. But actually, number 4, that fourth phase is, as I learned from this film, was really about giving so much back to society that you have already learned. And I feel like that should really resonate with our members. And that's where I kind of asked the question about volunteering, because I'm like, we have such phenomenal people, 20, 30,000 people live in our communities that could be giving back to others. And I hope they see that as part of this resilience journey of saying, how do you contribute to society? How do you take this opportunity to be concerned for others and just give back somehow?
I couldn't agree more. The world agrees more. The Dan Buettner with the Blue Zones agrees with that.
Mm-hmm.
This is how our societies have been up until 200 or 300 years ago when the Industrial
Yep.
Revolution came. We sought advice and guidance from our elders. Why not? They're survivors.
Mm-hmm.
They've seen more than we have,
Yep.
rather than marginalizing the way we did. And so, as the Japanese in Okinawa have a word for it, ikigai, it's called, and it is about giving back. It's about
Yep.
sharing what you've learned, just as you said, spot on, and that gives. Not only helps society, but it gives purpose, and it really leads to a much more rewarding and healthy longevity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So if
So,
there is
Kai,
a
did you have
question,
any other questions that happened to come in?
Well,
before
I
you
was just
do,
going to make sure
I'll
everyone
finish.
knew that they. Oh, sorry, Roger.
I'll finish my story. I've only got 2 slides
Oh, yeah,
left.
shoot. That's
And then,
right.
and then but I knew Sarah wanted to say something about purpose. So obviously I made it. So here I am. um, so I look as I go quickly through these characteristics and of resilience where I was in this situation. I realized that there's not a whole lot I could do about the helicopter. I just make sure I had my flotation device on, and for me personally, and that it was there for the patient if we needed it. But the big thing for me was to do my job, to be present and deliver the baby. That was my job. Maybe we were all going to die after that, but that was my job. So being able to view this and be able to be present and not let what was swirling around me, oh, we're going to die, that whatever. I had a positive outlook because I knew that I was with highly trained individual, and I knew I could do my job. And flexibility, it was not in a delivery room. This was in the back of a dark helicopter with flashlights, and a patient who didn't speak English, and concern for others that had to be there. We were concerned for each other. The PJs were there helping, but everyone had to do their job also. We were all highly trained physically and emotionally and psychologically, so we really had a really a healthy lifestyle relative to responding to this. We laughed about this so much after, and how someone's voice went up an octave or something on the radio and that sort of thing. And we definitely had a sense of purpose to not only to survive, but more importantly to get this woman and her baby back to Manila. And the pilots were able to stabilize our altitude at about 100 feet over the water, and we limped into Manila and we delivered them to the hospital. And so that I think I said only because I think that all the characteristics are there of resilience in a very intense thing. So it's really about attitude too, you know. So with that, more questions, Kai?
All right. Yes, please feel free to chat in some questions. And Sarah, thanks for your comment. She said, for one who's been retired for 6 years, she says it's okay to not set a purpose when retired. I have found my way these last years in my interests and comforts. I gave myself permission to take it slowly and find my purpose over time, which I think is an awesome,
super great,
awesome mindset.
Super great.
It is absolutely awesome. And I think there's a little bit of maybe a definition problem, or at least how we view purpose. Purpose does not have to be you're saving the world or you're earning money or you're something that you can necessarily brag about. It is something that is very personal for you. And your interests were personal. Your interests were they were your purpose. And so I think because we're so production oriented in our society, think that purpose has to benefit the world and that sort of thing. And that's nice. And that's the kind of purpose that is usually most helpful if it helps other living things, animals, humans, plants, the planet. But it's about what gets you out of bed. And so, but I agree, take time, and purpose will change. It will change so much as you age. And so just be ready for that. Be patient. Yeah. But that was excellent what she did.
Yeah, and Roger, you talked a lot about mindset, and it made me think about what I've heard from a lot of older adults in my life, and because of our ageist society, that, oh, well, people don't want to hear what I have to say, or, I can't help this group. And so I think going back to that growth or fixed mindset on purpose as well, knowing that we have these, ageist norms in our society too, and how do you overcome those thoughts in your head that you've grown up with.
This is why I love working with her, Sarah. See, Kai is, she's an old soul, but she's
in a younger body than us, Roger.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah. But it's very true. I'm afraid that we all have grown up in an ageist society, and probably the worst the source of ageism is in older adults themselves. And their expectations are low. They're not a Roger Bannister. You don't have to run a mile, but you do have to realize that you have experience that is necessary. Now, I agree. Right now, we have to break down doors frequently in order to share our experience and stories. And boy, I love doing that. But that's going to change, and that's what we're all about changing. That's what the Blue Zones identified, and I'm working at a whole thing where all of Cape Cod there's going to be a mentor sort of abilities for volunteering and mentoring. Both. So I think that we will get there where older adults, as a resource and as a treasure, and as the Blue Zones consider older adults cultural treasures, I think that's coming. It'll be slow, but it's going to happen, and we can make it happen faster if we seek out opportunities, even though it's difficult, to share our wisdom.
Couldn't agree more, Roger. Well said. Could not agree more.
Yes, I agree as well. And I'm just going back to Sarah's comment again about, permission, kind of taking those, you've talked about in other conversations, but those kites and steps, right? And focusing on your interests and things that bring you joy as well. So I just wanted to add that again, because sometimes we don't give ourselves permission. We think we have to do a certain way, a certain time. And I think that was just...
You're a mother. You don't give yourself permission to do much of anything,
I love it. So to those who are still remaining on the call, I think, Roger, you and I connect again on August the 19th, if I'm not mistaken.
Gonna give us a summer break. I'll be writing articles, right, Sarah, though? And so those will be available. Yes.
Yep. And, absolutely. But we decided after last year's journey that we wanted to give our membership a little time off in the summer to enjoy and get out of the heat of Arizona or wherever they might live. So we'll connect again in August. And reminder to everybody who's still on the line, we will be recording this and posting this on MTL for you. So if you have friends or family that missed it, we'll post it for you next week. And don't forget to share.